closest trading partner and ally. But here we are. So we're moving fast. We'll get it right, and it's a very, very positive thing for our country.
Are you moving too fast in the way that you've drafted legislation this session? Because this is the third time that you've had to bring forward amendments because of a lack of consultation.
No, absolutely not. There's a process to how a bill becomes a law. And the process is actually designed to solicit feedback. Now, there's not a lot of governments before mine that followed the process. There's not a lot of governments that would be open to feedback on. We certainly have been. The process is working. People are showing up at Public Bills Committee and having their say on legislation before the House. And you know, that's something that 2 weeks ago, if you would have read some of the reports, you would have thought wasn't happening, that they'd taken, that had disappeared. It has not disappeared. It's working. It's very effective. We listen carefully. Where there's a need to make changes, we make changes. But look, Nova Scotians, they expect their government to feel the same sense of urgency that they feel on the issues of the day. We feel that urgency. And in this case right now, we're talking about a national issue. Canadians feel a sense of urgency, and they're looking to Nova Scotia for leadership, and they're getting it.
You've heard the issues from the professional groups. Does the amendments iron out the issues that they raise, and does this then get this bill?
I spoke to a number of those, a number of the presenters last night I had personally spoken to before the Public Bills Committee, and heard their feedback and committed that we would make sure that people who still license in this province, so that we have clear line of sight to who's in the province, that would also make sure that the licensing bodies in the province have jurisdiction for discipline, and these types of things were legitimate things. Those came out of conversations that I had personally with a number of the regulators. So the process works. The bill I think one of the presenters last night was shown to me, said that this was one of the most significant things in this country since Confederation. That's the type of positive feedback that we're hearing. There's other commentary on the bill as well, and that's all part of the process. But this is a very, very positive national moment, and I'm extremely proud that Nova Scotia is leading the way.
Knocking down barriers, though, across this big nation, is it proving harder than you thought?
Not when you take the approach we're taking, and I think that's why the federal government is responding and saying thank you. I think that's why other jurisdictions. These things are we are where we are because of a thought process that said it's too complicated. It's not too complicated. It just has to be approached, and that's we're having the courage to approach it.
Just to be clear, will the amendments do what all of the professions were asking you to do? It's a little unclear.
I'm not sure. I don't have an extensive list of what all the There's certainly there's a million opinions in this province. I don't have the extensive list of the million opinions in the province, but certainly the commentary that I heard throughout this process, the ones that made sense, we're changing. That's what we do.
But the regulators specifically, the general concern amongst all regulators about their ability to continue to regulate even after Bill 36 passes and becomes law, is it your feeling that the amendments you will table will preserve that right for them, that Bill 36 will no longer supersede it the way it originally did?
No, this bill is the bill that talks about labor mobility in the country, and it's a goal for the rest of the country to aspire to quite frankly. Specific concerns around whether a professional who might be registered in another province or territory has to register with the corresponding body in this province, that will be the case. They will have to register. I don't know what other ones you might be referring to.
Are you close to your first reciprocal agreement yet?
I actually announced this in Ontario, the largest province in the country. I took a little bit of heat for announcing it there, but obviously that was a very important moment for this legislation and for our country. When you have the largest province in the country saying we're in, count me in, I think was Doug Ford's words on that one. So they're definitely in. I've had a number of conversations with that. I had a fantastic conversation yesterday with Minister Freeland, who's absolutely committed to doing this and pointing to Nova Scotia as leading the way, as is the Prime Minister. So we'll continue to lead the way on this, and there'll be some that are slow to follow and catch up, and there'll be others that want to recognize the urgency of the moment, just like we are, and we'll keep pushing forward.
Have you decided to agree to the federal government's proposed funding formula for the Chignecto business?
You know, look, I believe the federal government should pay 100%. I still believe that. It was really important to me that the court case proceed. We will accept the arrangement that they put forward on a without prejudice basis, pending the outcome of the court hearing. We actually had the initial hearings on that this week. They were very positive. The court says that it is a case to be heard for sure. There are dates scheduled. I think they're in May. So I'm still optimistic that the courts will see this the way that I see this, which is the way Nova Scotians see it, quite frankly, and we'll go from there. But in that moment, we had to move. The work has always been going on. Nova Scotia has been spending money, so we had to lock in what was on the table.
Are you concerned there could be another government that doesn't offer terms as good as that?
We just thought it was time to lock in what was there and continue with the court case.
One of the things that you're amending in Bill 1 is the definition of an outside member. It'll go from 100 kilometers to 50 kilometers. Could you tell me why you feel it's fair that somebody who lives an hour's drive can bill the province for an apartment?
I don't believe this is coming from me personally. I think this was a recommendation of the independent committee that looked at the total contract, I guess, between MLAs and the province. They've done that. We've accepted their recommendations.
Right. I guess in accepting, you're accepting the premise that they put forward. There will be people who already, Nova Scotians, who commute more than an hour to get to work and back every day, and then we look at this and say, how fair is that?
Look, I think they put forward a suite of recommendations. I believe they should be accepted in their full. I wasn't interested in picking and choosing. There's a reason that the committee did the work they did. I trust the committee's recommendations. We accept their recommendations.
Do you think it's fair?
I accept the recommendations of the committee. I think, look, the reality is that the committee has looked at the compensation package and what's required. You know, what goes in, what goes out, and I accept their recommendations. You can take it up with the committee for sure if you're interested in their thoughts on it.
I personally have no opinion on this.
No, look, I'm healthcare, education, trade war. I'm focused on a lot of things that actually matter to Nova Scotians. There's a big government, and when you ask a group of Nova Scotians who have great trust in to do a full report and you get it back, in this case we're accepting their recommendations. We're not picking and choosing through them.
These changes you brought forward on freedom of information meet the objections of the office, and why?
Yeah, so look, the changes around freedom of information, they started from, you know, recommendations from the office itself. So we put some legislation forward. They had some feedback on what they thought worked. There was all kinds of opinions on that. This is definitely a situation where there was at least two sides to the coin. The other side, which was, you know, kind of the leading expert in the country who happens to reside here in Halifax, said that the changes as initially presented were actually fine and appropriate. That part of the story didn't get a lot of coverage, but nevertheless, it still exists. What was put forward, the office came back and said, thank you for moving in this direction. We have some thoughts and comments on how to make it, you know, a little more in line with what we're asking. We took that. The department has been working with the acting commissioner. My understanding is that they're satisfied.
In New Brunswick, Premier Holtz talking about the idea of a free trade zone for Atlantic Canada. Would you be in support of that? Is that kind of maybe a good place to start? I'm in trade of free trade. I'm in favor of free trade in the country. Free trade in Canada, full stop, period.
Your letter?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can we talk about your letter that we've received a copy of, Premier? Thank you for that. I want to ask about the paragraph that talks about a national energy corridor / Energy East. Is the purpose of you know, asking for a new act, a Trans-Canada Corridors Act. Is the purpose of that to get a pipeline? It doesn't say pipeline, it says National Energy Corridor.
I think it's absolutely a pipeline, but there could be other things in an energy corridor as well, other transmission lines, other ways to move energy. So I think it's really important for our country. I think Canadians believe that way. I think that at this moment in time, with what we're facing as a country, most of the polling suggests that people in Quebec also support this. I know the leader of the Bloc is an outlier on that. He's not interested in Canada. He's only interested in whatever he's interested in. But the rest of us, the vast majority, are interested in Canada and the success of Canada. And I think an energy corridor is a really important part of our future success.
To anybody other than Honourable Mark Carney? Has it gone to anybody else?
Yeah, it went to the leader of the Conservatives and the leader of the Liberals.
Also in the letter, you talk about the idea of federal support for Northern Pulse replacement. Why do you think it would be appropriate for the government to give a loan to a foreign company that appears to be quite wealthy to begin with?
There's a Canadian infrastructure bank. There are federal programs that advance loans to entities for infrastructure, for economic development. I think a brand new modern pulp mill in this province is really important. It would be a tremendous asset for economic development in this province and for the forestry industry. So I'm hopeful that there will be a new mill in this province, a new modern mill. And I think to the extent that the federal government, through the infrastructure bank and other mechanisms, is providing loans and stuff, this is one that I think they should look at favorably as well.
Given the ties between paper excellence and China, do you think that's likely right now?
I've made my ask. They'll decide what's likely or not.
Obligate us to put skin in the game as a province?
The financing package that's something that's being discussed right now. But what I'm specifically interested in is that the federal government treat Nova Scotia fairly in terms of major infrastructure investments. We see across the country billions of dollars in new factories and plants and all kinds of economic development initiatives. In this province, we have one. It's a new pulp mill, and I think they should look at that favorably as well.
You announced the settlement agreement last spring. At the time then, you talked about potential provincial assistance being through the $100 million fund for industry that existed, and then also some payroll rebates, I think was the other thing. Does that remain the extent to which this province could help that company, or have you since explored other avenues where you could potentially pay into?
I haven't explored any other avenues.
Just to be clear, my question had to do with if you're asking the feds to put in money from this fund, normally infrastructure funds involve three partners. Does it mean that if they put money in, we have to?
You say normally, I say sometimes. It just depends on the type of project. This is obviously a modern mill. It's an economic development initiative. The province has and will make available the normal suite of economic development initiatives we have. Michael mentioned payroll rebates. That could be one. There's a suite of opportunities, I guess, that Nova Scotia, Invest Nova Scotia and others would administer. They would be welcome to apply for those. I don't know if that would meet your definition of skin in the game, but it would certainly meet mine.
Back to Bill 36, there's just the failure to consult on that one. Does that speak to the urgency around this, or do you regret not taking more time to iron those things out first and put a bill together that didn't have as much?
Until the end of time, every single bill that goes through this legislature and others, no matter the extent of the consultation that happens, somebody will stand up and say there wasn't enough consultation. That's just the way life is. That's fair. I accept that in this role. But the free trade in this country is something that Canadians want. It's something that Canadians just, quite frankly, are surprised that it doesn't exist when they understand the different hurdles and stuff that are there. So it's time for free trade in Canada. It's time to be able to labor, to be able to move across the country. It's time for products to be able to move across the country. We're in support of that, and we're leading the way to make it happen.
But wouldn't you save yourself and your government some grief if you went to people and said, this is what we plan to do, what do you think? To eliminate those unintended consequences.
I think lots of that happened. Lots of it happened. Lots of it happened. In fact, it was a very public national discussion. Lots of it happened. But for those who feel that it didn't, we have an incredible process in this province. It's called the Public Bills Committee. It's a very unique process, but Nova Scotia has it. It's the opportunity for every single Nova Scotian to appear before a committee of the legislature and give their opinions on legislation that is before the House and is working really good in this province right now. I think we're on 3 days of it right now. So for those who failing all else, that is an incredible stopgap that opens up the opportunity for Nova Scotians to have their say on legislation, and we listen very carefully to that. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, sir.
Recording stopped.